Hello everyone and welcome back to Northlands National Park. It's a new year, it's a new zoo. No, it's not. It's our new zoo. But what am I talking about? Welcome to the channel, welcome to the video. Today we have a very ambitious build ahead of us. It's going to be a combination of different themes because this took so long to put together. It took me about 15 hours of recording, and that's not including the times I gave up and was like, no, this is terrible. I don't like this at all. I'm going to take a bit of a break. This took a long time to put together, basically. It was very ambitious, it was very over the top, and it also kind of made me realise that I need to pull back on that sort of stuff and do something a little bit more basic and a little bit more simplistic. So this is probably the last big build that we're going to do for a while. It also means this may be the last... next video won't be Northlands. It will be back to Saltwell Safari Park. I think I'm ready to go back and do those finishing touches that I talked about ages and ages ago, and it'll be nice to just have a little bit of a change of scenery. So this build, there's a lot of different pieces going on here. We're starting off by putting some foundations in, and these are going to be really quick snippets of speed builds because you know how I build now. You know my process, you know that I like to use these walls to start off with, get my foundations in place, then pick one wall and attach blocks to it, then duplicate that wall and all of the other pieces that are attached to it to save me trouble later on when it comes to decoration. So the phases of this build are going to go foundations, then decoration. We're going to do the foundations for the entire structure, then we're going to do the decoration for the entire structure. You're going to see stuff popping into place, you're going to see snippets of speed builds, and then we're going to do a little showcase at the end. Pretty simple. Great, let's move on. We're putting in our foundations now, and these are going to be the foundations of a tank and viewing area for what is going to be an underwater section of the build. The animals we're putting in here are grey seals and king penguins. It's going to be a combined habitat because there's actually quite a lot of space, more space than I imagined when I first put it in, and I'm really looking forward to delivering it. It's also going to have a restaurant. We're putting in those tables now on that first floor. And I want to talk to you about how much I love these restaurants and how I think Frontier could use the tools that they've developed here to make some really interesting new pieces that we could work with. And I really think that they're onto something here, because having those chairs and tables attached to the restaurant means when your guests place the order for their food, they walk into a shadowed area at the back of the restaurant and are instantly teleported to their seats. You don't need paths, you don't need any of that, so you can make something elaborate without having to consider paths, which is one of the most frustrating tools to work with in the entire game. And I think that's brilliant. They should do something like that for viewing areas, where you get a ticket for free, or you buy a ticket, you go to a shadowed area at the back of a corridor and you are teleported to a standing area or seating, like the terraced seating that we have for the talks. And being able to do that would be incredible. I think it's something that they should do. But first, give me the hotels that I desire, please, because I'm putting in some hotels on this one as well. We're going to be putting a few sleeping quarters in there just to flesh it all out and make it look like there's this huge facility right in the middle of the zoo with a habitat where you can eat some food and look over at the animals. You can come down to an underwater viewing area. You've got a load of little shops and stuff that you can buy. We've put in a Just a Memento, Hat's Fantastic, and a Looney Balloons. I'll probably get some more merch stores research. That's something else that I'm working on while stuff's happening in the zoo. We're getting a lot of our animal research done, meaning our education rating is being boosted through the roof now. We're getting a lot more money coming in, and the zoo is starting to become sustainable, which means I'm not going to have to spend 10 to 12 years every time I make a habitat raising money, getting into loan trouble, and doing lots of stuff that I don't really want to do, and can just focus on letting the zoo grow naturally in a financial sense and building. That's what I want to do. So here we are putting in our first guest area for building, hotel type stuff. And these are just going to be little small sleepers with they'd probably have a bed at the back where the roof kind of slopes down, and then everything else will just be a mini kitchenette, a seating area, and a few places for storage. I just thought it was a really nice thing to add, and they also have these round tables that I'm going to pretend are private seating areas for people who have rented out these cabins. You can see we put in a lot of mulch and stuff there. That was going to be part of a big elaborate planter area, but I do remove that later on and put in some more places for guests to sleep over. We made some little custom windows here because I really don't like the Arctic wood windows. I think they're really like small and don't really offer anything. So I actually used them to create some shutters that open outwards, and behind them you have these windows that light up, which is a really cool effect. You're seeing stuff pop in. You've also seen everything else down below pop in, just all of the foundational pieces as we go around and finish off these areas. This is the mulch and the tables popping in. Now what happens later on is those tables get pushed to the front of what ends up being like an overlook on some fountains and some foliage, and then we put in the new row of cabins along where that mulch was. Here are those finished kind of little windows with the hatches. I think look really cool. And here we're building our little overlook that's going to have a load of greenery in it. We're going to be using these aquatic lampposts, and I'm just using the dry stone walls as like a frame that I can then attach stuff to, so that everything ends up being straight. Because one of the things that I ran into here was the axis kind of got a bit messy, and I don't know how I did it, but everything kind of became a bit of a pain to design. That was one of the major causes of stress for me on this build, was the rotation on certain objects just stopped working for some reason, and I think it may have been because there were just far too many pieces in here. We used the New World aluminium sheeting because I think they create a really nice fence, and we just ran that all the way along to create our fence. The barrier between here and the entrance, and here we do have a little bit of an overlap, but I think it's covered pretty well and you don't really notice any difference. And it's smaller pieces like that I feel like you can get away with overlapping certain objects, so it's not too much of an issue. We coloured the aquatic lampposts just to make sure that they sat a little bit more uniform with the rest of the build. I didn't want to do too many differentiating pieces here because I think it can look a little bit garish and a little bit meh. It just puts me off sometimes when I see certain pieces being used that probably shouldn't be used. Like downstairs, we actually ended up using the East Asia doors, but I think they fit in quite well with the Arctic wood, and other East Asia pieces don't really fit in well with anything other than the East Asia packs. Same with the Arctic wood, that doesn't always fit in well with other pieces. Anyway, back to this. We were using some of these things that look a bit like ship hulls, and I had an idea that I wanted to create this like dome tunnel entrance coming in here, where foliage has grown through this reclaimed wood and kind of almost starting to surround the entire structure. And to be honest, when I finished doing this, I thought this isn't going to work. I'm going to need to take this out. But I was surprised at the final outcome, and I was really quite happy with it. Especially considering we're not going to pretend these are pieces from a boat, because we wouldn't get a boat up here. We're out in the middle of nowhere. How would a boat, a galleon no less, or whatever, like an old wooden ship, get up here? So we're just going to pretend they're kind of bits of wood that have warped with age, and they've been here since like the 1800s or what have you, and we've reclaimed them and used them to create this structure. It could have all been waste wood that we had no idea what to do with anymore, so we've used it to create this tunneled entrance and allowed nature to kind of reclaim it. Kind of like when you have ships that are deliberately sunk to create artificial barrier reefs or what have you. We're going to create a wooden reef above ground for plants. I'm pretty sure there will be a name for that, but never mind. So yeah, this didn't particularly work well at first, and when I finally did get it to work, I was really quite happy with it, and we then threw down some fairy lights and stuff, but you'll see that all in the decoration segment of it. So you're now starting to see how elaborate this ended up being. We're nowhere near halfway through, well, we're about 5 minutes off the halfway point of the video, and we haven't shown you a lot of the foundation work that went in here yet. There's still a lot more stuff to pop into place and a lot more stuff to show you getting done. Like on your left, you will have noticed the penguin hut, penguin cave there. You haven't seen me build that yet, but I thought it was something nice to add on. And the way that this has kind of ended up working is I tried to have a better format to how it's delivered, so I want to stick with one area, get that developed, and then move on to the next one. And it doesn't always work like that when I'm actually recording. Here's that overlook popping into place, and you can see that it doesn't look great from this viewpoint, which is a key viewpoint because it's where the guests are going to be sitting eating their meals, or it's where we have guests staying over that are coming out every morning. They don't want to just see that. It looks a bit bad. Excuse these guys who need the toilet as well, but You can kind of see the genesis of something there, and it looks really cool when you walk through this. It was just missing something, and my hope was that that was foliage. Next up, we're going to do our tank, and this is basically where our underwater viewing area for the seals and the penguins is going to be. I wanted to create a staff path that went all the way around so that staff could come around here and have access to it. I then wanted to use this concrete because I think it's fantastic. The clipping on it is so minimal. You could stack several of these blocks right on top of each other and make some tiny adjustments and you still wouldn't get any clipping. So there's been a big thing for me to be able to use these pieces, and I've never actually experimented with them before. If you remember, and if you watched the Wild Africa habitat build that we did, that actually was done with plaster, which does have some clipping issues. So it was quite nice to come away from that and use this, and it gave me a little bit more of a sense of what I would be using moving forward in creating structures like this. So this was just fun to play with. I wanted to make sure there was a staff path going all the way around. We are then going to be adding in some metal tubing as a support and the metal girders to trim the edge of this and hide any imperfections where I've got like a slight adjustment wrong. This took a lot. This was really finicky and really detailed work that I had to do here to get these things matched up and have like a natural progression going from A to B. And also we had to adjust for terrain differences. We had to make a little ramp here and there and then put a fence on, and there was a lot of experimentation, and I'm still not 100% happy with it, especially the underwater section, and I think that could do with a little bit of work. But I'm happy enough now to consider this finished, and then when we come back we can do a little bit of a redevelopment after a week-long break where we go back to Saltwell. So that's the plan anyway, but I'm really happy with how this one turned out. And we also put in some of the grates, the Planet Zoo vents, the longer ones, and had some water special effects coming out, so it looked like this was where the water was coming in, and all that pipe work is locked up in that concrete and things. Little details like that I think really make a build. So we're coming back around here to build our staff area, which is a little bit of a backstage meshwork area that is like the airlock type structure for the build. And this was just a simple case of fencing. I've not shown me building that house because it was a bit of a nightmare to build, and there was a lot of really zoomed in messing around with things which I didn't want to show, but you will see it in the pop-in section of the build, so you'll see it getting constructed in a different way. The fence was really simple, using mesh, Arctic wood eaves, and the Planet Zoo standard fencing. And over here we are building our little penguin hut cave system where they'll be able to go and sleep. The seals don't need a lot of hard shelter, but the penguins sometimes do require it, so I thought it would be nice to deliver something like that and kind of make this amalgamation of man-made structure with these fake rocks. So there is a plaster roof on the top of it that I will put some vents and stuff in at a later date, and I just think that'll be a nice thing to do because it just adds this whole thing where we have constructed something here specifically for the penguins so that staff can come in, make sure that they're okay at night, what have you, things like that, little finishing touches. The barrier ended up getting adjusted a few times here as well, and we put a little fence joining this structure to the main restaurant building so that they couldn't escape, and that allowed me to put some foliage outside of the barrier limitations that wasn't causing issue for the penguins. Because one of the problems with this build in particular is there won't be a lot of foliage. The penguins and the grey seals only want about 20% of coverage from plants, which makes it a little bit difficult to build the way that I usually build, which is having lots of foliage, as you will have seen in the Japanese macaque habitat and the reindeer habitat. I like to fill my builds with grass, greenery, plants, trees and stuff, and I can't do that here. And I could, because technically it doesn't have a great impact on the animal's well-being. Here it is popping into place, looking really cool. I did forget to put a door on, but that does eventually get solved as we do a little bit of decoration later on. Back to what I was talking about. Fences popping in as well here, so you can see that build process in a little bit of a quicker push through, and we do have a few notice boards and stuff. I do make some custom designs. Here's the house going into place. This was just really simple. I didn't do too much on this because it's not an internal structure that we're going to be looking at very much. Back to our underwater section, we're just putting in these posts. So yes, foliage and greenery and things like that. It doesn't really have a huge impact on the welfare of the animals. It will only have that impact if you are putting grasses and stuff and trees that reduce the area that they have to maneuver, the traversable area within the build. Other than that, it's not actually an issue for them. What it is an issue for is the happiness of the guests, because somehow they are absolute nature oracles, and every single guest knows when there's too much greenery and too much plant life covering your habitat, and they complain about it. And if you have a number of habitats that are stacked up with too much foliage in them, the complaints stack up, and they eventually start asking for refunds, which on hard mode you really don't want, because if you get into a spiral of people asking for refunds, your reputation drops, so less people come to your zoos, less income, less donations, money troubles aplenty. So that's why I'm sticking to the sticking as best I can to the foliage and grass coverage requirements for the animals, and that's also why I've put in a few heaters to melt some of the snow, because the grey seals don't actually like having a lot of snow. Back to the rest of this build. So this is us putting in our little grates, and I messed around with a couple of different waterfall textures just to finish it off and make it look a little bit more different to each other. Basically, I didn't want all waterfall pieces coming in, so we used a couple of midsection from waterfalls, and then used some of the rapids structures at the bottom to finish it off, and a few rapids foams just to indicate that the water is filling up and spreading around this tank. I find these special effect pieces quite difficult to work with, especially when you're working with deeper water. So what it might be worth doing for me in the future of this build is to build up some rocks to the base of that waterfall, so that I can then hide the special effects inside it without them losing their effect, because the lower down you put them, the less apparent their effects are on the surface of the water. Coming back round, I thought it was probably time to put in a few props. So this boat was a really good addition, and I hooked it up as if it was attached to the concrete itself and anchored there as well, and that would just give the staff an opportunity to come in, get in the boat, row out onto the surface. They could even wave to the guests who are eating their food in the restaurant, but mainly to clean up the tank. You would assume that there were other methods to clean up, so I used some of the New World grate systems that I use in another video to create some stairs. You saw me use them in the doll sheep habitat to create some steps, so I just used them to create some ladders going down into the water itself, and I thought they were a really cool thing to put in. Over here we built a little scene, and then when I finished it and pushed play, suddenly the seals' welfare plummeted, because this somehow managed to block their entire movement pattern from that staff building to the middle of the habitat, which was not good at all. So we ended up splitting this up into smaller sections and moving them to different parts of the habitat itself. So we still had the same amount of props in, they were just dispersed over different areas of the zoo and in separate little scenes, I guess. I was going to put a sunken ship down here, but I decided, we'll not bother. Well, a sunken boat, a little rowboat of some sort that had been lost to the elements, but I decided not to bother. What I did instead was build up my rockwork. Now I wanted a quite thick coverage here, and then the idea is it disperses as it goes towards the rest of the area. And the reason I'm putting it quite thick here is because I want to try and cover up the feeders as best I possibly can. Also, because we don't get to put a lot of greenery and foliage in here, we're going to have to use rocks to create that texture of the rest of the build. And I may well put in some ice and snow here as well, just to give it this kind of ethereal feeling to it and like an almost magical touch. And what we could do is we could run up the rock cladding all the way up towards almost the surface, so you just get a little bit of this concrete and metal structure, and then put a few ice blocks just hidden in, so they're just poking out a little bit, just to give it this little colour pop. but again, that's something that I'll probably save for a brief redevelopment when I have a bit more time to put into this, because the clock was ticking here at this point. And I really wanted to get this one done and finished and out there. So it was a case of finishing this off so that I was relatively happy with it. And the idea is we put in our rocks, then we add a little bit of greenery to give like a little burst of colour throughout this. But mainly it's going to be a rocky structure with a few wooden props and stuff thrown in there. Further around the underwater part of this build, we start putting in some of the wooden pieces that we used to create that archway. And again, this was mainly just to create some scenes underwater. Something for the penguins to be swimming through when they do their dives, and the same with the seals. And I used some discarded tea crates as well. And because of the low prop count in Planet Zoo in general, especially when it comes to the thematic props, I'm now considering going to the Steam Workshop and seeing what community creations I can download. Now, I don't have time really to spend playing around and creating separate boxes or crits or what have you. And I also think it would be nice to shout out to some of the wonderful community moderators that are going on down there and creating their own sort of props and things. So I might actually do a little video where we have a look at the workshop, get some props and stuff, and I put them in and I give the people who have created those things a little shout out and link you guys to the props that I end up using if you want to grab them yourself. That'll take time because that workshop is pretty full already, but I think it's going to be worth doing because it'll give me a little bit more variation to play with when it comes to building these zoos. Over here we are putting in our wooden structures, and again this just creates a nice little montage for the animals to swim through, and it also gives me an opportunity to use them for some screenshots and things, because I do have some custom signs to go in this, and what I want to do is use some photographs that are taken from the habitats themselves to create that signage. I've been very blessed that I have the cutest grey seal pup who was being born during this simulation, and she has the doughiest puppy dog eyes you'll ever see, and she's all white, like she is absolutely adorable. and she's going to be a big advertising pull for us, I think, and she's actually our highest rated animal since she's been born now, so that's pretty fun. Last stage is to do a bit of lighting around here, and I did dot these around at varying different heights, but I didn't really think it was an issue. And then we brought in, these are the new world spherical lights, which I thought would be really cool to use. And it then gave me an idea to create kind of like a fake oyster out of rocks, and then put the light in them, so that was like the pearl. And that's something that could take a bit of time, but I may be up for doing that, and maybe we'll do a little mini-sode on that, so I could then put that up on the workshop and you'd have some underwater lighting that you can play around with if you want to build your own underwater habitats. That reminds me, I never put my shipping containers on the workshop, so I should probably do that at some point as well. Going back to our restaurant and shopping area now, it was just a case of putting in some nice foliage, and this is an opportunity for us to experiment with foliage from other biomes, because in here you would imagine it's a controlled environment where things and plants can be looked after appropriately without the harshness of the winter elements getting to the plants that are down here. So naturally we went for all of our hot area plants, deserts, tropics and stuff like that, and we just filled up these planters, and the idea here was to fill up with as much colour as possible, because at the moment, looking outside and all of that, we've got a blanket of white with a few sepia tones coming through and a few black and white tones coming through, lots of greys, lots of not monotony, because it looks great, but these are the opportunities we have to fill the place with colour and make this a memorable part of the zoo. So the idea was we were going to use a lot of vines, a lot of foliage, and really bulk this place out and make it look very well decorated. So we used these planters. We then had our 3 larger planters that are over in the viewing areas. We did the work on those as well, just to bring them up to scratch. And we put in some security cameras, some more lighting, loads of different little touches to make things work. I even added a few more guest education barriers at the underwater viewing area. I did put in 3, but I took one out, and I'll probably go back and put a 3rd in, because an idea that I've had is to record a small snippet of footage from the webcams, because I have found out it looks like the new burrows and the webcam integration with them, it only works for burrows. You can't just link a webcam up to them, which is a shame. So I'm going to do my own. I'm going to record a little snippet of footage from a webcam, save that as a video file or a GIF, and put it on an advertising board. So it looks like there's a live feed there, and that will advertise the habitat. So that's probably what I'm going to be doing. I'll put that in. That'll not happen in this episode, but I think it's something that I certainly want to explore, and I'm looking forward to doing that because I think it'll be a really cool addition. Obviously, it won't be a direct live feed, but it will give a sense that that's what's going on there. It'll just be a looped GIF or a looped video of some description. This was also an opportunity for us to put in a load of conservation education boards. So we put one for loads of different stuff in there, and I may make a few custom ones of these, but again, this is all time. This is all extra stuff to do, and I would love to do it, and I probably will do it at some point, but not right now. Right now, I want to focus on building and making this zoo happen. So I think what I'll probably do is, now that we're at the coming towards the end of this episode, we'll probably do one more episode here where we do a little bit of development. I do have one idea that I want to explore, and then that'll take us up to episode 10, which will be, let's have a little bit of time to chill out, explore the zoo, talk about the animals, and we'll do a full little tour of things that is live, and it'll not be a speed build or anything. It'll just be me talking about the zoo, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about the things that I do and how I do them, and my kind of vision for Northlands compared to Saltwell Safari Park, which was actually just my big sandbox franchise mode. So here we used a few different fake roots and things and just gave them that eerie little sea blue colour, because it was again all about adding little pops of colour. Had some hanging mosses coming down, and then over here we threw in our ivy going up those walls in a nice little pattern, and just picking out areas where it could have been overgrown and started pouring down, because what you don't want with the ivy is to just throw in a couple of patches here and there. It needs to have this progression. It needs to grow from somewhere and spread to somewhere. That's why it's important to use every piece you can. Over here we come to the point where we're trying to make this archway and this tunnel work by using caribou moss to depict nature coming back and reclaiming the area. And I'm surprised to say that it worked. Putting in some trees either side of it as well gave it the coverage that it needed to make it look like it wasn't just this thing that was just static and popped out in the middle of the place, and I really like it. I'm shocked that it's turned out so well, because when I first put this structure in place, I thought, I'm gonna have to change this. I'm definitely gonna have to change this, but the perseverance helped, and rather than changing it, looking for a way to make it fit, just spend that little bit of extra time, and it really worked. It really helped. I'm quite happy that it's turned out well, because I was nervous. I'm going to be honest. Over here we're putting in some foliage for this overlook. So those little East Asia shrines look really nice in this format and in this area, and I've really enjoyed using them, because the classic fountains don't. They give off that they're too clean and bright, and this is something a little bit more rustic that I want to create, and that's been the theme throughout, so it was important to stick to that, and I'm glad that these little shrines are here, because we can turn them into nice fountains, put in some foliage surrounding the whole place, get in a little bit of rock work, and put down our Christmas trees, because we are in the land of eternal Christmas, where everything is happy and all of the animals are very well looked after. I don't know why I keep putting these Christmas trees in. It's not to create a Christmas theme at all. I just like them. I think they're a good size and they give off a bit of light. So that's why I put them in. And then finishing everything off, and then we put in a few decorative items. So these buckets, I imagine, were filled with fish, or they were used to move a bit of sand around or what have you. But fish is probably the most likely one given the animals that are in here. Threw up a few penguin statues on their house, and then this framed this rock perfectly, and I really like it, so I put that down. So here we are, our brand new habitat. These are our signs pointing people in the direction of the underwater viewing area. You can see the preview of our adorable new baby seal there as well. I'm really looking forward to showing you her at the end of the video. over at the penguin habitat where people do get a look in and the penguins don't escape, even though this is totally open to the elements. Going down into the restaurant area, everything looking really cool here. I'm really pleased with how this turned out. Into the actual guest part of this space, lots of conservation tips and things, viewing area there as well, lots of shops and the restaurant itself, as well as a few toilets and ATMs. Underwater, penguins really enjoying their time there, lots of space for them to swim around and dive, and we see their natural behaviours. Over at this little wreck here as well, and the tea crates and pallets and stuff, there's our staff entrance to the penguin hide, which I think looks really cool as well, especially with that little statue and that tiny little adjustment and effect put in there as well. Little baby penguin coming along here at the staff area, being for a little explore, maybe to beg for some food, the cheeky bugger. And I put this jetty in as well, and surprisingly both penguins and seals use it, and it's just a nice little space for them to go and have a little rest away from the guests because nobody can really see them there. Restaurant has been really popular, lots of people being driven towards it, and it's bringing in quite a bit of money. I just need to make sure I'm managing the staff a little better. Over here we have that private dining area for people who have hired out a room here, and I think what we could do is put a few more signs in there to actually really emphasize that this is a hotel as well, so there's spaces for people to stay. This looks incredible too, and we're going to go over and see our baby seal now while I close out the video. She knows she is the most adorable thing in this park right now, and she is very proud of it. But she is the most attractive thing in the zoo. All of the guests want to come and see her. She has the highest rating of all of them, and she isn't even like a gold genetics rated animal or anything. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure you drop me a like, a comment and a subscribe. And our new baby seal doesn't have a name. Give me some naming suggestions for her. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.